So I'm glad you all were able to join me here today. You know, it's kind of hard to know how to start this conversation. The region has undoubtedly had a lot of good successes over the last few years. But still, with all that success, there are some wonderful opportunities we need to explore together, and certainly many challenges that we have to try to address. So let's get started. Anybody want a cocktail?
Yeah.
Recorded live from Restaurante Il Localino in historic Inman Park, it's Dinner with Doug. Doug's guests are Hala Modelmall, Alicia Phillip, Anibal Torres, and Carrie Armstrong as the chairman.
Now, let me tell you, if anybody's got hearty appetite, lamb osso buco.
Thought about that.
Off the
That
bone.
would be a lot.
It is.
Yeah, but it
Do
sounds.
they do that scattered, covered, and smothered, or is it?
I want to hear the story again about how you got your name.
How I got my name?
Yeah.
Turned out to be very simple. It had to start with K. They wanted me to be another William K. Armstrong. And my 5-year-old sister could not stand Kermit. So they had to come up with a different K, and they came up with Carrie. So that's how it ended.
I like her
So it's
already.
And you have been
her.
indebted to her for the rest of your life.
I love her dearly. Love her dearly. Although nothing wrong with Kermit, I just,
Just wasn't
don't
the
look
time.
too much like a frog.
In my case, Anibal was my dad's name, so he wanted a junior.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm glad that it was a junior because when we moved from Puerto Rico to New Jersey, Annibal, it was very hard for people to. So they called me Junior. So when I was in high school, and I applied to a few schools, 2 or 3 I remember getting back to me and said, Annabelle, we're sorry to tell you, we would love to have you here, but this is an all boys.
Yeah. I knew you had to be on there.
You're like, yeah.
Okay.
Don't miss,
Yeah.
I think about when I came here in 1972, and Atlanta was still using the next great international city motto.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find a decent international restaurant.
Couldn't even find it.
International.
Right, not me too. I mean, usually they're the leading edge.
Right,
you know,
you couldn't
but-
find anything, but we aspired to
That's
great
right,
things,
that's
which is one of the things I love about this place.
I've never been more optimistic. It's kind of fun because things are really pretty good right now. I mean, as you said, there's a lot of good stuff. There's some challenges, but we've come so far.
Well, we're growing jobs at 4 times the rate of the rest of the nation. And that's a fabulous thing to have happening, but I think it puts a lot of the onus back on us and the Atlanta Regional Commission and the people who really are planning, because we've got that great growth. I agree with Carrie totally. I'm very optimistic, but it does present opportunities for us to do a lot of other things and to get it right this time. The planning.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thrilled with where we are, and I do get a sense that people really want to be engaged and want to do the right things, and that more people are even coming to the table to do that. So I'm in a good place too.
I'm so impressed by the generosity of Atlantans to really give back to the community and to really care deeply about making it a better community. We're the 4th most generous city in the United States. Really? Yeah.
With all the things I know, I didn't know about.
See?
Yeah, that's a good.
I can
that's a
educate
great-
you on
Always
some
learn
things, you
good
know?
things from you. This is
I
good.
know, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Well, I would also add that the generosity of the business community, and I say
Yeah.
that from
Yeah.
this standpoint, and it's definitely part of what Alicia is talking about, but the people who give to the Metro Atlanta Chamber, it is clear they're not just giving for their companies. I mean, it's a region vision, and it's a vision for making Atlanta all it can be. I'm always impressed by that. Yeah.
I always love that statistic that 70% of the world's
Transactions.
credit and
Credit, debit,
debit transactions come through Atlanta or come through company owned by Atlanta, right?
20% of those are yours.
Oh, those are the credit parts, right? No doubt. Yeah. And then the health IT is another growing sector. Obviously, film and entertainment is huge, and everybody knows about that. But there's a lot of things that are getting to be homegrown all over again that we're being able to
Right.
keep here, and not when they get to a certain stage going somewhere else, which is what we have for so long. But you guys have done a great job leading a charge of of finding the venture capital to help nurture them at those different stages of growth so they can stay here, you know, and we can keep those often young, not always young, but folks with those great ideas here, because at some point in time, we're going to have our own Google, we're going to have our own Microsoft or whatever else, right?
And of course, you know my other big one,
Which is?
the inequity of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We are not going to continue to be that thriving, amazing community if we have so many people that can't have a path
Can't see
forward.
a
Can
path
see a path
forward.
forward,
And
yeah.
don't
see a
have an
realistic
and don't
possibility
have
to
that
grow and
opportunity.
improve their lives, right? I agree.
We have got to address that, or else.
I think you guys have heard me say this before, but I really like to frame it around economic mobility because, you know, it's about, to your point, seeing if there is a path and being able to move up that line. And it's the same things we talk about all the time as a group. It's education, it's access to education, access to health care, and just access, period. And so I'll talk about one of my favorites, which is transit, and making sure that people do have access to jobs and to education. So it's all tied up so tightly, but I think one of the beautiful things is that the leaders in town, and certainly the people at this table, are willing to put it out there and just say, we have to address income mobility.
So you guys are doing something really interesting at the Latin American Association with women's empowerment and small business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
A little
yeah,
bit more
sure.
about
Yeah,
that?
we have our Latina
Right.
empowerment program.
Right, exactly.
We just launched about 3 years ago, thanks to a hometown company, Coca-Cola. And we put over 1,000 women to that program already. And about 30% of them have started their own small micro businesses. And just to see, you know, somebody come in, has never turned on a computer, and a year later is doing basic Excel, basic business plan, basic web searching. I mean, that is powerful, you know, and it's empowering that community to thrive.
Everything about commercial real estate has to do with people and where people live. 20 years ago, you could figure out where somebody was going to locate their office by finding out where the decision maker lived. And now the dynamic's completely different. It's where do my employees, or the folks I want to be my employees, where do they live? And it's a real concern. It's on the list of anybody who looks at any community across the country as a location. I'm sure you see it all the time now.
Absolutely.
A lot of what we need to do, I think, is to demystify the problem. We have to explain in very real terms what it means. You know, how do you look at the cost of housing combined with the cost of transportation?
Right.
Exactly.
And that's the critical part that
Yeah,
a lot of people fail.
Not only is there collaboration, but everybody's in everybody else's speed dial. People encounter a question or an issue, and they grab their phone and they hit a button, and they're talking to Halo or Alicia or Doug or Carrie or Annabelle.
And I don't know if you've ever asked your colleagues in other communities, but I have asked other community foundations. And so far, among the 30 largest, nobody
does it.
Oh,
Nobody
is
has
bringing
this
like
relationship.
this
Again, just
community
speaks
together.
to the Atlanta way. People are willing to work together in this market. I mean, that's it. We shouldn't take this for granted, as
No,
was
I
mentioned
don't.
earlier.
You know, often when I give speeches or presentations, people ask me, well, all these new cities that we're creating, doesn't it just make your job harder? I said, well, first of all, I respect that because we live in a democracy and those are people's choices about how they want to live locally. I said, but you know the thing about this, it means that we have to exercise collaboration more in order to move the needle. And those leaders of those new cities soon find that out, that they need their neighbors.
Right, exactly.
And they need other non-government partners to really help them address issues. What is one thing that you'd like to see the five of us organizationally working together on to address that you think we're not necessarily giving enough attention to yet?
Well, we're already working on Learn for Life,
Right.
which
yeah,
for
right,
me
right.
is,
Yeah.
for our kids, is a great initiative. And I'm glad that we were invited to be part of that conversation.
Absolutely.
So for me, education and the fact that this group here is the leading group of Learn for Life is important.
You know, I can't pick one. There's so many different things. And Doug and I got enamored with a phrase last year where people were talking about the aperture. It's part of breaking down the silos, but it's also always looking at a slightly larger aperture. And you realize that you can't address workforce housing unless you're addressing zoning, unless you're addressing transportation. We're not in our own little, worlds, and we have to look with a wider view.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I would go back to the broader net of economic mobility, and I say unfortunately just because it is so multifaceted. And we've talked about many of the facets tonight, but to put that's almost to me the umbrella thing that we should be working on together. A lot of things are going to happen naturally. We're very fortunate in this market to have a lot of business activities, to have incredible higher education, to have a lot of technology, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of innovation. Those things are getting a life of their own, which is wonderful, and their ecosystems are growing. But I think we're going to have to be more intentional about the ecosystem around economic mobility. So I think we are. But we just got a lot of work to do.
Very well said. Yeah.
I would say that's it's being intentional about that, and it's clearly setting a table that and keeping the issue up there. And there are pillars underneath of that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have to look at the big, and then we have to look at affordable housing. We have to look at the transportation. We have to look at jobs and where the jobs are, and how do we create really livable wage jobs where people live. And what are the incentives we're offering, and are we offering enough incentives to bring those kinds of livable wage jobs as much as we're offering incentives to bring $150,000, $200,000 a year jobs?
Absolutely.
And I keep coming, that's our public dollars, and we should all be thinking about that.
Now I was going to add to one of the pillars that you mentioned before, for us, is immigration reform. Because when you've got a portion of our community is participating but not fully, and then when you've got those situations where you've got those mixed families, those kids that are here, that are U.S. citizens, cannot function either. So we need to address that. Now that's a federal issue, but it's something that we need to solve at the federal level.
And I think your broader point is the fact that it takes partners at all levels of government and community, whether that's local, regional, state, or national, to try to remove barriers that get in the way of full opportunity for all of our citizens. And
one of the things that astounds me is how much talent we're leaving on the table. We're leaving it on the table either because immigration laws, or we're leaving it on the table because people don't have the basic education they need. So when you think about that, and then you think about we're growing 4 times faster than the nation, we don't have any business leaving any talent on the table.
Now, Annabelle, you were getting ready to say something I think was really important for all of us to be reminded of. What was that?
The I-85 bridge that caused so much pain and anxiety and stress to our community was built ahead of schedule. I believe it was built ahead of budget, I believe. But it was built by 80% Latino workforce. And so I just want to plug to the
just
Latino
a reminder
community
that all of us make this community strong and viable.
Yeah, that was a big deal, and it was tough to see that bridge down, but it was built up.
Very fast.
Well, kudos to our Latino brothers and sisters.
Absolutely.
We're really appreciative of that. Guys, it's getting really late, and I really appreciate you being here for joining me for dinner. It's been great. I get so energized by things like that. So, I think maybe we'll call it a night.
Yeah, I didn't really, it's late. I got to scoot. I got people waiting on me, so I'll pick this up, all right?
Oh, great, great.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
There's a first time for everything. Hey, all right.
I think that's a wrap.